This piece of wood is over 200 million years old. It's solid rock, and somehow every single cell is still perfectly preserved. How is that even possible? I'm Patrick, and this is one of the most mind blowing natural processes on Earth. Most people think petrified wood is just old wood. It's not. It's not wood at all anymore.
I'm Kristen, and today we're breaking down the actual science of how a living tree becomes stone molecule by molecule without losing its shape. We're talking burial, minerals, chemistry, and millions of years of patience. Let's get into it. Okay, so petrification doesn't just happen to any fallen tree. You need very specific conditions. First, the tree has to be buried fast. And I mean fast. We're talking volcanic eruptions that dump tons of ash, massive floods that bury the entire forest in sediment, or landslides that cover trees before they have time to rot. Speed is everything here. Here's why. When wood is exposed to air, it decays. Bacteria and fungi break down within years, sometimes months. But if a tree gets buried quickly and deeply, it's cut off from oxygen. No oxygen means no decomposition. The organic material is preserved in this sort of suspended state, locked under layers of sediment. But burial alone doesn't turn wood into stone. That's where groundwater comes in. Once the tree is buried, mineral-rich water starts flowing through the sediment. This water is packed with dissolved minerals, usually silica, which is basically quartz, but sometimes calcite or even iron pyrite. And this is where the magic starts. The water seeps into the wood's cellular structure. Think of wood like a sponge made of tiny tubes and chambers. Those spaces start filling up with minerals. But here's the key. The wood itself is still there at this point. It hasn't been replaced yet. This is called permineralization. The minerals are filling the empty spaces inside the wood, but the original organic material is still present. At least for now.
All right, so now we've got a buried log soaked in mineral water. What happens next is honestly incredible. Over thousands and eventually millions of years, the organic material, the actual wood fibers, starts to break down. But as each molecule of the wood decays, a molecule of mineral takes its place, literally a one-for-one replacement. This is called petrification, and it's different from permineralization. Permineralization is when minerals fill the spaces. Petrification is when minerals replace the structure itself. The silica or calcite doesn't just coat the wood, it becomes the wood. The cellulose and lignin that made up the tree, gone. What's left is a stone replica so precise that you can still see the growth rings, the bark texture, even individual cells under a microscope. And this is why petrified wood is different from a regular fossil. Most fossils are just impressions, like a footprint in mud that hardens. Petrified wood is a three-dimensional replacement. The tree's entire internal structure is preserved in stone. You're not looking at a mold or a cast. You are looking at the actual architecture of the tree, frozen in mineral form. Now, this process doesn't happen overnight. The groundwater has to be consistent, the chemistry has to be stable, and the sediment layer has to be undisturbed for a really, really long time. If the conditions change, if the water table drops, or the sediment shifts, the process stops. That's why fully petrified logs are so rare. Everything has to go right for millions of years.
So let's talk about color, because this is one of the coolest parts. If you've ever seen petrified wood, you know it's not just brown or gray. It can be red, orange, yellow, purple, and even blue. And all of that comes from the minerals in the groundwater. The base mineral is usually silica, which on its own is usually clear or white, but when other elements get mixed in, they stain the wood as it petrifies. Iron is the big one. Iron oxides, basically rust, creates reds, oranges, and yellows. Manganese gives you purples and blacks. Copper can create greens and blues. Carbon creates deep blacks and grays. And here's what's wild. Different sections of the same log can have completely different colors depending upon what minerals were present in that specific layer of groundwater. So you can slice open a petrified log and see a rainbow of geological history. Each color is a snapshot of the chemistry at that moment in time. The more variety in the groundwater chemistry, the more vibrant and complex the colors. That's why pieces from places like Arizona's petrified forest are so stunning. You're seeing millions of years of mineral variation locked into the wood.
So, how long does all of this take? The short answer, a really long time. Most petrified wood you'll find is between 10 million and 300 million years old. The process itself, the actual mineralization, can take anywhere from a few thousand years to several million, depending on the conditions. Now, there are some rare cases where petrification can happen faster, and certain environments with extremely high mineral concentrations, like hot springs or areas with volcanic activity, you can get rapid mineralization in just a few hundred or even a few dozen years. But that's the exception, not the rule, and even then, you're not getting the same level of detail or preservation you'd see in wood that's been slowly petrified over millions of years. The vast majority of petrified wood comes from ancient forests that were buried during the Triassic or Jurassic periods. We're talking dinosaur era. These trees have been underground longer than humans have existed, longer than most species have existed. And that's what makes holding a piece of petrified wood so surreal. You're literally holding deep time in your hand.
All right, so where can you actually find petrified wood? In the US, some of the most famous spots are in Arizona, especially Petrified Forest National Park, and parts of Utah, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. And you'll also find it in the Pacific Northwest, around the Mississippi River Valley, and scattered throughout the desert Southwest.
But here's the thing, just because you find petrified wood doesn't mean you can take it. On federal land, like national parks and forests, collecting petrified wood is illegal. You can look, you can take photos, but you can't remove it. Same goes for most state parks.
There are some places where you can collect, though. Some Bureau of Land Management areas allow small amounts for personal use, and there are private lands and commercial sites where collecting is totally fine. Just do your research before you go. Know the rules and respect the land.
And honestly, if you never pick up a piece, just seeing it in the wild is worth it. Standing in a place like the Petrified Forest, surrounded by logs that have been stoned for 200 million years, it puts things into perspective.
So that's the science. Trees buried fast, minerals seeping in, molecule by molecule, replacement, and millions of years of chemistry creating something that shouldn't exist, but does.
If you want to learn more about geology, fossils, or just weird science stuff like this, hit subscribe. We've got a lot more coming. Thanks for watching.
See you on the next adventure.